Hello and welcome to this One Take CEO interview brought to you by the executive consulting firm Platinum Group. I'm Dale Kirshner. Today I'm talking with Chad Halvorson, founder and chief experience officer of Minneapolis-based HR-technology company When I Work. His 10-year-old business provides digital, flexible scheduling systems used by 1 million employees at 150,000 workplaces across the United States. And it's just getting started. There are about 82 million hourly workers nationwide. And if COVID-19 has taught their employers anything, it's that there is a need for more flexible, responsive, and intuitive scheduling systems that people can use and that these systems also can learn as a business learns. And that's what When I Work delivers. So Chad, welcome to One Take.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
Yeah, me too. You know, based on what your business does, right away I'm thinking, boy, maybe you were hard hit. I'm thinking, you know, you probably had a lot of hospitality businesses that use and still use, hopefully, your services. But how did COVID-19 affect your business when it comes to the hospitality sector and the other sectors that you serve?
Yeah, it was significant. You know, you can imagine when you have customers that are restaurants, hospitality, in retail, and really kind of the industries that were most directly affected by what happened earlier in 2020, and the policies that we put in place to help slow the spread. It was significant. I think it was a double-edged sword in the sense that we saw the impact and felt the impact like on day one, and felt it strong, through the first several weeks of the pandemic. But then we also learned a lot in the same period of time where we were able to kind of develop our sort of action plan for our customers, and for how we approach finding new customers through all that. Where other companies perhaps are still learning where the total impact is, the further removed you are from the front lines of those affected by the pandemic. So it was significant, but it was something that we prepared the business for through all that. It was a tough time for everybody, but we had to make some tough decisions on how we kind of prepare ourselves to weather that storm, and we did that. And fortunately, with the diversity of our customer base and the resilience of small businesses and the resilience of restaurants and hospitality, we've been able to not see the impact that we were kind of anticipating, but then also we've recovered from that and found customers in those sectors and in new sectors, throughout the second half of last year. So it's been a much better outcome than we had thought it could have been going into it.
Sure. Did your business plunge? I just figured, gee, when March, April hit and it was like everything shut down. Were you like, what's going on? I mean, did you see like 50% of your business just kind of stall?
Yeah, so it was we saw it dropping day by day, middle of March and through April, and we had kind of forecasted that like a worst case scenario is that it drops 40% in the next in the subsequent couple of months. It never got that bad, which we're very grateful and fortunate that it didn't. We dropped just over 10%, where I know others dropped a lot more. So we were fortunate around that, and then we began to recover, during the summer months, and then kind of made up that 12% hit by end of summer, and have been steadily now grow in a growing trajectory since. So that's been exciting, and we couldn't be happier with the way that the company and the teams performed to do that, the way that our customers have approached their businesses and their relationship with us. But yeah, it was not a time for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
I suppose too, if I'm a restaurant chain or a hospitality business, I'm still going to need your tools and your services. Even though I might be down 50% staff wise, I'm still going to need to use what you're providing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way that we approached it. Is it was, we looked at what was happening and talking with our customers, and it was about like asking them what they need to be
Hmm.
able to kind of weather the storm. And a lot of it was, sure, there was customers that turned off their services or that went out of business, unfortunately. But a lot of it was dialing back and thinking about how do they use the tools to manage through the uncertainty and through the uncertain customer demands that were in play. And we were able to really lean in there and help with that from a flexibility perspective, as well as from an ability to kind of manage that uncertain customer demand with the appropriate labor needs that would go with that.
That brings up a really fascinating part. You have artificial intelligence as part of what we're talking about here, and what you provide people is nimble. It's real time. It's flexible. Tell people a little bit about what is this technology, and how does it operate so that it is this flexible and nimble and can scale up or scale down.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, it's the speed at which you can make adjustments within your business and within your team, because these types of tool sets and platforms, they only work if you have full engagement and adoption by everybody that is working at the workplace. And when you have that level of engagement, and we see 85% of an entire organization's team is engaged on a weekly basis. When you need to make changes or when you need to react to situations, you can make those changes, and action gets taken quickly, within the workplace, and that's really what drives the flexibility and the responsiveness is that daily, weekly, and monthly engagement, so that when you do make changes or something does need to change, that information is being consumed like instantly, and the actions being taken quickly as well.
I can only imagine if I am running a business with multiple locations in multiple states, what you provide me is also real-time data. And do you provide analytics with that too then, so that it provides me some helpful information in addition to just the raw information?
Yeah, so what we'll provide, things like labor reports and attendance reports and kind of in-flight, real-time sort of labor cost analysis that's happening throughout the pay period, so that you can get ahead of issues before the pay period's over. It's one of the things that enables customers to make kind of game time decisions, because if they see that that there's overtime is becoming an issue in one location, or they need to increase staff in one location, they can then deploy or reduce as needed.
Hmm. I forget, but hospitality isn't your only sector. So what are your key sectors that you serve?
Yeah, and that's been kind of one of the strengths that has helped us muscle through the last 12 or 9 months or so, is the diversity of the customer base. So our customers, they're the big four is hospitality, retail, and healthcare, and then of course restaurant, which you could kind of bundle under hospitality too. But those are the big four, and then beyond that, you have seasonal customers, theme parks, amusement parks, museums, water parks. Then you have law enforcement, you have fire departments, you have casinos, you have a whole host of types of verticals, logistics, delivery drivers, gig economy type operations, and that breadth of application is one that all have that pain point of making sure they have the right people at the right place at the right time. And and because we're able to do that so well, from a employee experience perspective, and from an implementation and kind of real-time response and flexibility, it tends to work quite well within those shift-based workplaces.
Yeah, and you mentioned healthcare. That's a whole other basket.
Yep.
Which of
Yeah.
these areas are you looking to grow the most aggressively at this point in time, and why?
Yeah, so the way that we're thinking about growth is kind of twofold. There are key verticals where we see a lot of opportunity, and we've been seeing healthcare in particular growing. Even before the pandemic, it was our fastest growing segment in what we call the mid market, kind of the organizations that are just above small business size. That's where we've seen the most opportunity. And then through the pandemic, it's just been accelerated with the needs of organizations that need to get healthcare workers and caregivers into shifts very quickly. And in large numbers within these testing facilities and things like that.
Which areas you're talking about in healthcare? Because there are so many, and I was thinking, boy, is it in-home health? Is it ER? Is it clinics? Testing facilities? Where do you kind of focus first?
Yeah, it's the home healthcare is one key area where you have caregivers that are needing to be in a particular home or in a particular facility at a certain time with certain qualifications and that sort of thing. Kind of the mobile the mobile experience of the platform enables that mobile sort of behavior that exists in like that kind of environment is in home healthcare, and then it's in nursing when you have needs in hospitals or clinics of getting the right amount of coverage from a nursing perspective based on your patient needs, and then testing is kind of one that's really emerged within the last 9 months, where there's testing facilities that need a lot of people very quickly to be helping support the demands that are there.
Yeah. So it sounds like your diversification strategy was well underway before COVID hit. So that's good.
Yeah.
But when I think about what we've been talking about and what we talked about previously, what would you say your greatest challenge or challenges were in 2020, and how did you address them?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenges were the work that we did to try to understand what was happening and how we were going to respond to it, and then what we needed to do to prepare the business to be able to get through whatever those unknowns were. And I think that was the hardest part of 2020 in particular was figuring that out with limited information, and not knowing kind of where things were going to be a week, a month down the road. Um, and and yeah, so I would say that's probably where we
Okay.
spent the most amount of cycles figuring it out.
And when you were back in March, April, did you say, okay, we need to lay people off, or did you say, let's do PPP and see where we're at? How did you deal with that projection at first, where you were like, we're going to really take a hit? It turns out you didn't take as bad of a hit, but how did you adjust back then?
Yeah, so we looked at everything. Like when we were looking at the initial impact, the initial shock wave of what was happening with our customers and with revenue and everything else, and it, put together kind of a best case, worst case sort of scenario on impact to the business from a revenue perspective. And then once we had that kind of dialed in, then we was looking at all the options, everything from the PPP, do we qualify for that? Do we not qualify for that? Are we the kind of business that that's set up in a way where it could do that? What does the expense structure need to look like for the business? The first thing we did was we pulled back on all expenses that were not people related, right? So we pulled back on our marketing expenses. We pulled back on any expense that wasn't essential, because during that time people also stopped buying, right? So it wasn't just like existing customers were shutting down or were hitting the pause button. It was people weren't buying. So the money and the dollars we were spending for going and finding new customers, pull back on that as well. And then from there, it was around do we have to reduce the size of the team? If so, by how much? What's the right amount? How do we approach that in a way that is ensuring that as we go forward, we can weather whatever is in front of us. And it was, it was a lot of work. It was stressful. It was the worst. Having to reduce the site, you reduce your team is the worst thing ever. And to have to do it, because of something that's completely outside your control, was really tough. But got through it, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to be hiring again, and we've been hiring people back that we had to say goodbye to in the spring, and they're now back on the team, and that's been exciting as well.
That's great. You also were going through a CEO change. You were CEO up until fairly recently, so your new CEO is kind of going through baptism by fire, correct?
Yeah, no, 100%, and it's just another kind of another wild spin on 2020, because that was something that we had in the works long before for COVID, and I had been working to find someone to kind of pass the baton on to with the team and with the board for probably almost a year before springtime of the last year, and Martin and I, we met up for the first time in the late 2019, and things progressed along pretty well in terms of relationship and the fit and what we could do together and everything else. And by the time we got to a place where we were ready to rock and roll and go, the pandemic hit. So then it was about orchestrating that transition, the timing of it, whether readying the business for what we were seeing with the economy. But it went better than I could have imagined. We started to kind of transition sort of behind the scenes a bit during the pandemic, or during the initial kind of onset of it. And then as we got through kind of the initial shock wave, started to, go through a more complete transition during the summer months. And it's been fantastic. And one of the things that is really setting us up nicely for where we go from here.
Good. And I forgot to mention annual revenues and total employees at this point.
Yeah. Our total team size now is, I think it's in the 130s now as we kind of wrap up the year, maybe 130, 135. And I think we're anticipating to bring that close to 200 by the end of the year. So a lot of growth plans for this year with what we're seeing so far. And our revenues are in the tens of millions.
And it'll be over 100 million by the end of the year, right?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. But that's our goal. Like, our goal is to get to 100 million as quickly as we can.
Yep. And you do have investors. You've done some rounds of financing, correct?
We have, yes.
Okay. And what was your latest round?
Our last round was our Series B, which was in 2016, and that was a $15 million round. So we've raised a total of right around 25 million in total since the beginning, and we bootstrapped the first 3 to 5 years, and then did our first outside capital in 2014.
I just think this is a cool story because I also looked at your LinkedIn, and you started out at Radio Shack, correct?
Yeah, actually, it was a grocery store, then
Yes,
Radio Shack.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Radio Shack. So I think that's awesome. Congratulations on how well things are going thus far. And as I mentioned that, what do you see as your greatest challenge now for 2021?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, managing our growth plan against whatever uncertainty is still out there with what's going, with what's happening. And we're optimistic and confident in the business and in the market. The market is massive that we're going after. But I think the biggest challenge that's outside of our control is going to be, how well everything sort of evolves over the next 6 to 9 months, with the vaccines and how that impacts the economy and what happens with hospitality and restaurant, and do we start to see things kind of come back into a normal set of customer demands this summer, or is it going to be much further out than that? I think those are um, the unknowns that I think are the hardest to manage around, because we're going for it, but you got to go for it, but then you also got to take a certain level of you know realism to like what's going on, so that you're not overextending yourself and that sort of thing. But we're feeling good with the spot that we're in, and we're in a spot where we're in no way, shape, or form in a situation where, if faced with another sort of decline in customer demand, that we'd have to face what we faced, last spring. So we're feeling good about that.
Good. And what is When I Work's primary value proposition compared with the competition?
Yeah. So the base kind of value proposition is, we help hourly teams, and we help hourly workplaces schedule, communicate, and track time with their hourly employees, and there's certainly other solutions out there that do that, but what we do that is very deliberately different and decidedly different is we focus on the employee experience and really lean into what does it take to get maximum engagement and participation from the workforce, because that's ultimately what's going to drive the value that the business is getting from the platform and the problems they're trying to solve. So it's an employee first platform that is tailored for shift-based workplaces. We don't pretend to be the solution for, a standard 9 to 5 environment. We focus on workplaces that have shift-based hours, and a focus on the employee experience within that platform to deliver the most value to the business. And what that does is that enables the businesses to be very flexible with the platform and implement in very, very quickly. So those are just a couple of the results of that approach.
Do you use technology where you can kind of track people's whereabouts, so that you can also track what they're doing or where they're going during their shift? And I was thinking about in-home health. Some of the new federal rules require some of these in-home health workers to actually be able to check in with something that shows that they are where they are. So I was just wondering if you're using that technology too.
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, because there's tracking, and then there's checking in and kind of tagging where you are. We don't do tracking. Like we don't track every move an employee makes, and in some cases, like that's not something that should be done, or that
Right.
is even legal, I think, in some environments. But we do have the check-in, right? So when you clock in or you check into work, we do ask the employee to confirm their location, like just to kind of pin where that you're there and where you're supposed to be. But in terms of throughout the day and throughout the shift, we're not tracking, where you are, like when you're ordering your Uber and you can see where your Uber car is. It's not like that. It's more like, checking in for your shift and checking out of your shift.
Sure. Last question. What question should I have asked you that I didn't ask?
That's a good question. I think the one thing that I think we kind of touched on it, but in terms of the growth plans for 2020, we've got a really exciting growth trajectory in front of us, and the team that we have going into 2021 is absolutely fantastic, and we've got a lot of plans to continue to invest in that team and to grow that team. So stay tuned for a lot of more growth stories coming out of When I Work, and opportunities for those that are interested. We're remote first, so we're hiring people all over the country now, and even outside of the U.S. in a couple cases. And it is something that is new given the situation we're in as a society. But excited to grow the team, not just from Minneapolis, but from all over.
So tell folks, what are the kinds of jobs you're looking to find people for the most right now?
Yeah, the big areas is sales, marketing, and we also have some roles open in engineering, development, and engineering.
Well, great. Chad, we are past our time, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to thank our sponsor today also, which is the Platinum Group, which for 40 years has been the trusted counsel business owners have turned to when needing help with complex situations ranging from acquisitions and managing rapid growth to divestitures, turnarounds, restructurings, and crises. If your company needs help or would appreciate a second opinion, give them a call at 952-829-5700. You can also learn more about Platinum Group at theplatinumgrp.com. If you would like to sponsor one or more of these one-take interviews or suggest a CEO to be interviewed, please let me know by emailing me directly at dalekirshner@gmail.com or calling me at 763-567-9241. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on One Take.